Hey everybody, Susan Garrett here, and back-to-back lives, 2 days in a row. This one is nothing and everything to do with dog training. So I'd like you to give me a heart if you can hear me. Okay, so I got the thumbs up that you can hear me. Here's how today's presentation came about. As you may know, I have a young visitor from Russia who is a dog trainer, agility competitor for the Russian national team who came to learn here in Canada. And today's her last day with us. And so I wanted to share with her some lessons about success as a professional, and I thought, why don't I share this with everybody? So at the risk of sounding Pollyanna or didactic, I'm going to share with you 12 things that I would tell my 23-year-old self, which is what Anastasia is, if I could go back in time and share these lessons with me. So 12 things that I think are important for success and happiness, and it's not just about dog training, you know, it's about a business, it's about long-term happiness. It's the things that I've learned through, being a success in the corporate world, starting my own business, and the failures and hardships I've had through there, and, being the leader of a team, and all the things that I've learned. Okay, so the first one. I'm going to share with you a quote that has been attributed to Einstein, but everything has been attributed to Einstein, so whether this is truly Einstein's or not, or I think it's a phenomenal quote. And it says, we have a choice. We can look at everything in life as a miracle or nothing as a miracle, and the choice is ours. And I believe, people say, well, there's a middle ground. You can say some things are miracles, but I don't think you look at that way. You either are a little more of a cynic, or you're a little more of a Pollyanna, a little more of looking for the good. And so that is the attitude that I have chosen to take. And I was influenced very, very early on by Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, and later on Tony Robbins. Those are the three people that really influenced me in my early 20s when I was, about the age of Anastasia. So the first thing, the piece of advice I have is be intentional about your attitude. So when you wake up every morning, there's this great quote. He's a Christian comedian by the name of Michael Jr., and I heard him recently on a podcast, and he said, every day before I hit my feet, I hit my knees. And every day before I get up, I think of what I'm grateful for that day. And I actually end my evenings that night. And no matter what it is I'm doing, I think about I intentionally think about the attitude I want to bring to this. So whether it be doing a podcast, doing a podcast, I intentionally put myself into a place of gratitude and of service and of love. When I wake up every morning, KGC. Those are my three letters because it reminds me of a friend who started her business. Kingdom God Created is what she reminded her of, but it's actually her initials. People don't really know what the name of her business stands for. But KGC for me is kindness, compassion, and gratitude. I wake up every morning and I think of those three things. What are the thoughts that will put me into a place of kindness, compassion, and gratitude? I go into the gym and that changes. It's always gratitude, but I go into the gym and it's gratitude, beast mode, and why not me? So those are the three things I think of when I'm in the gym. Before a competition, just before I go into the ring, I think of gratitude, love, and connection. So be intentional about the attitude you want to take in every situation in your life. Because if you aren't intentional, it will happen by circumstance of your surroundings. And that won't always serve you. That won't always allow your best self to come forward. So if you are intentional, you will be perceived in the way that you want to be perceived. So that's very important. For me, I know that I've had many people say to me, wow, if people could just... people have a wrong idea of who you are. Once they get to know you, you're not at all how you're perceived. And I thought, wow, then I need to change the way I'm perceived because I would like the world to see who I believe I really am. So that is, be intentional about your attitude. Okay, the next one is be humble. And this is, the more you succeed in life, whether you have a business success, whether you have a dog training success, an agility success, every little success can feed your ego. And you really need to be conscious of grounding yourself, because at the end of the day, none of us is curing cancer. None of us, we're making a small impact on our world, but there are much bigger and more important things out there. So do what you need to do to remain humble. And a lot of times for me, that is surrounding yourself with people who will ground you, who will remind you that you are just human and you put your pants on the same way everybody else does every morning. So I remember back in 1998, I went to the U.S. National Championships, and at the time there were 4 divisions in agility. And after the end of the 3 days of competition, it got down to the finals. I was in the finals of 2 of those 4 competitions, and I won 2 of them. I came back with 2 big cups. I remember John was away judging. He was an obedience judge at the time. I put those big cups up on the kitchen counter, and I put a picture of each of the dogs in those cups. And John walked home. I asked him about his weekend. He didn't go into the kitchen right away. I asked him about his judging. He finally went to the kitchen and he stopped. And he said, 2 cups? I thought you took 3 dogs with you this weekend. Always have somebody in your life that keeps you grounded, that reminds you that your self-importance isn't really self-importance. If you can come from a place of humility, you will have that compassion will become much easier to you. And, one of the things that I always remind myself of is you are never as great or as awful as what people write about you. And you need to remind yourself of that. And along with that, being humble, I'd like to remind everybody to acknowledge your mentors. When you have success, think about why you have success. So a lot of times people will say, I started in this terrible dog training foundation and I learned all this stuff and I had to unlearn it. That was a contributor to who you are today. So be grateful for those hideous beginnings and stop thinking about them as hideous beginnings. Think of them as lessons that happened for you. And for the people who really were magical in your life, do not be afraid to acknowledge them, because none of us got to where we are on our own. Nobody's reinventing the wheel. They are coming in on the shoulders of other amazing people. So be sure you acknowledge those who brought you to where you are today. Okay, the next one. Choose to serve rather than teach. This was a big one for me that I learned, because early on when I was teaching seminars, I had that ego that, I'd won a lot and I came in and thought I was all of that and a bag of chocolate chip cookies. And I would go into a seminar and I would just spew what I knew. I wanted to share everything. I didn't hold anything back. I taught every single thing I knew. And some of the people got some great information and were able to apply it to their dog training. Some people went home feeling crushed, humiliated, and lack of confidence. And some people just thought I was a jerk. And so what I learned is, if you go into a group to share your knowledge and you come from a place of service, how can I best serve you? Maybe you don't need to know everything I know. Maybe you need to know how to be a more confident person, how to protect your dog's confidence. So no matter where you are, if people are looking up to you for a reason, don't go in thinking you're going to teach. If you go in thinking you are going to serve, you will come in and deliver what people need. And there's such an incredible difference between those two. Okay, the third one, be gracious. So this goes again back to ego. And if you are in a position where somebody criticizes you, you need to be gracious. Thank them for their input. Consider it later on. Don't immediately allow your ego to bounce up and give all the reasons why they're full of shit. Don't allow your ego to come and say, yeah, but I've tried that. If you've asked for somebody's help in particular, nod and listen. Be a student. Bring in all that they have to give you. Because the moment you do this with your body language, the moment you say, yeah, but, you now are shaping that person not to share. You now are telling that person, your service is not of value to me. Be gracious, even if you haven't asked for that help. If somebody is just being critical of you, fight the desire for your ego to say, yeah, but you don't know who I am. Be gracious, be humble, thank them for their input, and decide later what of that information is going to serve you and what can be let go. Don't make that decision right in that moment. Be gracious and thank them. Okay, next one. Bring love to hate. And this is a toughie because the more you are able to make a difference in this world, the more people will be critical of what you're doing. And there's a number of reasons for that. And I think one of the biggest reasons is there is a medium. There is an average. And the more that you do things that are different than what the average are, there's a reason why you're doing something that we're not. One of us is right and one of us is wrong. I don't want me to be wrong, so I've got to be critical of what you're doing. Know that criticism is not about you. It's about them not wanting to change at this time. And you need to embrace that and not be hurt. Not start taking notes about who did you wrong. Not facing that apparent hate. So people say, oh, we all have our haters. You know, we just have people who are maybe not understanding who we are right now. So what I like to do is if I know there are people who have been outspoken about me, you know, Facebook is a wonderful thing. People can be so brave behind a computer screen. And if I know people have written things that have been unpleasant about me, and I know I'm going to be seeing them at an event, at a conference, or at a, maybe I'm speaking on the same panel they are on, or I'm going to be competing against them. Here's what I do. I prepare ahead of time because I want my attitude to be intentional. And if I know I'm going to be seeing those people, I prepare in my mind a list of things I would say about them if somebody asked me to speak about them. What kind things? And you know what? Sometimes, you know, it's been hard. It's been, wow, I really like the way they groom their dog. If you constantly, and every time I see that person on a weekend, I rehearse one more kind thing I would say about them. And guess what happens? You are projecting. This is all unspoken. You don't have to go up to somebody who is a perceived hater and go, hey, I really like the way you comb your hair. Because, you know, probably can get bitch slapped for that. But you're just walking through and you're thinking this kind thought in your head. And guess what happens? Here's what I found. Over the course of the weekend, that person softens. It's unspoken. It's just a vibe of love that changes the atmosphere between the two of you. And you may never invite them over for supper, but you can at least appreciate each other's differences and come from a place of mutual respect rather than somebody's right and somebody's wrong. All right? So when you're in a situation where you think there's perceived hatred, think about how you can switch that to love. This is a biggie. Show yourself. This is the most important thing you can do. You know, self-love is talked about, but nobody really understands it. And self-love, in my opinion, starts with self-talk. And that means eliminating things that are limiting you. Things like people saying, oh, I'll never, or I always do this. You are creating patterns for your subconscious, whether you believe in the woo-woo or not. What is the harm in changing limits to limitless? How does that hurt you? But how does it serve you to say, oh, I'll never get a qualifying score. Oh, my dog is such a duffer. He will never get around this ring clean. How does that serve you? And instead, and an easy way to change that is just put the word yet after anything that you might say when as the word comes out of your mouth, I'll never qualify, I've never been able to qualify yet. Immediately you're changing it into, there is a possibility today. Instead of, I never qualify on these courses, I've never been able to qualify on these courses yet. So if you show yourself respect by the way you talk to yourself, and that goes back with being intentional every morning or in every situation, that whether you're walking into a meeting or you're, little things like me walking into the gym, creating an attitude that's intentional brings self-love into everything you say. And so you eliminate what Dr. Daniel Amen calls the ants, the automatic negative talk about yourself. You want to eliminate that. Okay, so just put that to the word yet. All right, number 7. And I had a tough time limiting this to 12, I got to tell you. Number 7 is be curious. Be a lifelong learner. And being curious, for me, I have 2 podcast machines. I didn't know they were podcast machines until a friend of mine referred to them as podcast machines. I love podcasts. We live in such an amazing age where there's amazing, phenomenal information out there that can fill us with a great attitude and great information. And so my 2 podcast machines, number 1, when I go into the gym and whatever I choose to do my aerobic workout on that day, so whether it be a rowing machine or what, that's my podcast machine. That gives me 20 minutes of being plugged into a phenomenal podcast. My second podcast machine is my car. So when I get into my car, I turn on a great podcast so that I'm filling myself with amazing knowledge. So be curious about knowledge. Be a lifelong learner, and it creates this insatiable appetite to want to know more, whether it be about personal development, whether it be about dog training, about animal behavior, whatever it is, pick something to be curious about, might be the place to start, and then go from there. All right, be kind. And so this is, again, going back to the intentional attitude, and it's, when I say be kind, it's be kind in again, remember, this is me telling my 23-year-old self. Be kind in the words you choose, and be kind in the thoughts you have, and be kind in the actions, and think about how you are being perceived. And if it isn't the way you want to be perceived, then think about being perceived in a way that's more kind. So that's both in a meeting, in a conversation with a loved one, or in dog training. And here's a little tip. I've never told anybody ever that I do this. On your phone, there is an app called Voice Memo. If I train my dogs for an hour or 30 minutes, or I'm going to be in a conversation with somebody, I will just hit record on my voice memo. And the reason I do that is so that I can play it back and listen to myself and the meaning that I'm giving the words that I'm having in conversation. Are they playful and humorous? Are they compassionate and generous? Or are they judging and bitter? So if, for example, and I admit I do this mostly when I train my dogs, but I've done it in many situations. When I'm in a meeting with people, I've even done it in conversations with John. And it's not about, I got this on tape, I'm coming back at you. It's all about me and how am I being perceived? Am I sending out the compassion I want to be sent out in the way I talk? So with my dogs, if my dogs do something wrong, is it the earth is falling and you're a bad thing and I just can't stand you? Is there anything in the way I talk to my dogs when I train them that my dogs could feel judged, that my dogs could pin their ears or feel like they're bad? If there is, then why did it happen? How can I give my dogs more knowledge so that doesn't happen again? And right now, you might listen to your dog training and have 85% of it be language you don't want to be, you're not proud of. And that's okay, because that's what happened with me. And so then the next time, it was maybe 40% of the time was an intonation. Like it was exasperation. Oh, what are you doing? And I'm a person who trains with only games and reinforcement, but occasionally I lose my temper. And not lose my temper, I yell at my dogs. I lose my temper and then I go, oh, crap. And so use your voice memo and listen to the conversations. Is what you're saying, is that intentional? Are you coming across, if somebody was just listening to this, if there was the big eye in the sky and no one's watching but you, is this something you're proud of? And so that's where kindness for me, use your voice memo. Find out how kind you really are. Okay, be productive rather than busy. It's so easy, especially with computers, that we replace what's important in a day for what's urgent in a day. What's urgent is never what's important. So, going back to being intentional, set a list of 1 to the most 3 things that you could do today that would make today a success. And ideally, if you're a goal setter like me, those 3 things will go back to the goals I have for the week. And those goals I have for the week will lead into the goals I have for the month. And those goals I have for the month will lead back to the goals I have for the quarter. And you see where I'm going here? Those goals I have for the quarter will lead back to the goals I have for myself for the year. So set 1, 2, or 3 things that are important for you to get done today. And don't let somebody sending something across, I give everyone on my team the permission that if Susan gets a squirrel idea and goes, oh, can you find this for me? That they have the right to say, I'm working on this as my priority today. Where would you like that to be, Susan? So that my urgency doesn't bump their priorities. And I may say, no, pal, I need this. But most of the time I'll go, okay, you're right. Can you do it after you do that? All right? So it's easy to get to flop into bed and go, oh, wow, I was so busy today, but I didn't accomplish anything. That's because you allow urgent to bump out what's important. Don't let that happen. Okay, be purposeful about programming your brain. And this goes back to, how, when you guys think about people you're around. There's stories that you can share with others that make you laugh, that are inspirational, that are stories of triumph. Then there's stories about rehearsing the pain you've had in your life, or the jerk that cut you off in traffic, or the drama from Facebook. Every time you rehearse, you retell a story. You are rehearsing for your subconscious that it just happened. You are releasing those neurochemicals that make you feel pissed off or angry or hurt or bitter over and over and over again. So let's say you rehearsed that story, I got cut off in traffic, or shit that went on at the airport when they didn't get my booking right. You are releasing those chemicals that are not being helpful. You are reliving the pain, the angst, the aggravation, the bitterness over and over and over again. How many people did you tell? You tell it to 10? How many years have you been talking about something that happened to you 10 years ago that was so, a bitter breakup, or how somebody did you wrong? You are rehearsing for your subconscious the trap, the anxiety. Let it go. The things that are serving you, keep telling those stories. As long as the people around you aren't sick of hearing them. You can be a little considerate of that too. But don't retell the stories that don't serve you. Don't retell the stories that don't, help you be a better person or help fill you up. Let those ones go. Acknowledge, well, that crap, it happened for me maybe. It felt like it happened to me, but let me pretend it happened for me. Let me file all of that, and let's not talk about it again. Or talk about it in a phenomenal way. I think I am a phenomenal dog trainer because I'm blessed with the exceptional ability of being dyslexic. I can put a positive spin on a learning, that somebody would call a learning disability. It makes me see the world differently, and I am so blessed because of it. All right? So think about how you are programming your brain. The stories you retell and the reframe you put on things that you believe happened to you, whether it be, the sudden death of a loved one, or the tragic way you lost your house, in a natural disaster. I mean, these are all horrid things. They're horrid. And we have to, rise above them and move on. But if you keep retelling the story and reliving that pain every day, every month, every year, it keeps you locked into that tragedy. Okay? Next one, be selective about your influencers. This is a biggie. I would suggest, no matter where you are financially, that you want to set aside a certain percentage of your income for coaching. And get the best coaches you can afford. When I graduated from university, I got a job that paid me $14,999. And I know that because if they'd paid me $1 more, they would have had to put me on their dental plan, which they didn't do. So that's what I got, and I still paid for coaching. At that time, I could go to the gym and I could get a coach once every 2 months. And I would get them to give me a program and then revisit me 2 months later. I couldn't afford coaching every week. but I could afford something. So today I have 8 coaches that are influencing me. Okay, so coaching is a big part of the people who are influencing you, but more so than that are the people you spend the most time with. Who are the 5 people, I'm sure you've heard this isn't just me, 5 people that you allow to influence you. That is allowing people to rent time in your brain. They are planting seeds of who you are, what you're capable of, what limits you, and sometimes you have to make the hard decision to say, I need to divorce this friend. Because this friend is making me feel bad about myself. This friend is making me feel bad about my dreams. This friend likes to talk about the drama on Facebook and relive it over and over again. And that doesn't feel good in my soul. And I once had to divorce one of my best friends. And it was one of the hardest things I ever did. And I did it from a place of compassion and love, but it was never understood by her. Unfortunately, she died young. And I know it was the right thing to do for me, but it was a terrible thing to have to do. But I spoke to her many, many times. I invited her to come and join me at a Tony Robbins workshop, which she did, and she sat there cross-armed and cynical, saying why all this Pollyanna shit doesn't work. And finally, I had to, after several years of this, say, I love you. I will always be a phone call away, but I can't have you be one of the people I talk to every day of my life. So it was the best thing, as much as hard as it was. Be selective about the 5 people who are influencing in your life, because it is a much better place when you surround yourself with people who make you laugh, make you happy, and help support your dreams. All right. This is a biggie. Hug the ones you care for. We had a conversation. This started with a dream. A dream I had about somebody in my life, and the dream, I love to meditate, and I think, if I could add another one, meditate every day is so important. And after I meditate, when I'm just coming out of those meditation, I get these, visions, messages, call it what you like, and one of them was, this person needs to be hugged. And so then it made me think about, who do we hug and why? And I brought it up to people I spend my time with the most, about people on my team and people here in the one class that I teach every week. And I said, who do we hug? And the answer was, well, we hug the people we care for. I then did some reading on the internet, because, it's always resourceful. The benefits of hugging. Hugging increases oxytocin. Hugging has got so many benefits. And the strong suggestion is we get 8 hugs a day, minimum of 4, and ideally 8 hugs a day. And it's just such a powerful thing to do every day. So I asked the people around, who do we hug? My nephew Phil works here at Say Yes. Every time we see each other, we hug each other. Most of the time, we tell each other we love each other. So I hug John, and I hug Phil. And so I asked, who do we hug? And the answer came back, well, we hug people we care for. I said, okay, when was the last time that you hugged me? And this was a group of 5 people I see every week. Well, we've never hugged. Well, why? Does that mean you don't care for me? Well, no, we hug people that we don't see very often. Well, why do we hug people we don't see very often and we don't hug people we see all the time? It doesn't make sense to me. So we started to hug each other every time, every day, whenever we met. And I strongly encourage you to have that conversation with your influencers. And don't just hug the people you don't see very often. Hug the people that are important to you in your life. And, at first it might be like LOH does the tent hugging where not much can touch. That's okay. And maybe it's, I think the research says you should hold the hug for 10 seconds. Now, Phil says the 10-second hug really should be only for the people who maybe have been wrongly imprisoned in some bad place overseas. They were wrongly accused of something, and you thought they were going to be beheaded, and you see them at the airport, and they finally came home. That's a 10-second hug. Maybe beyond that, you have to work up to a 10-second hug, because you can't go up to just somebody you see every day and give them a 10-second hug, because that's a little awkward. But build up to it and consider hugging the people you care for every day. Okay, so some of the things that didn't make my list that I think are really important, I mentioned meditation, laughing every day. Never lose I just love it when people tell me, why don't you grow up? You know what? Be a kid. Be a kid at heart every day. Let that be the driving force. You know, you've got to be serious about the things in life that are important. But I love it when people say, you're so, you know, you're such a kid. Why don't you ever grow up? You know, I love Peter Pan. So that's one that didn't make my list. But laughing every day, be a child at heart, and meditate. If I was going to do 15, that would be it. 12/15 lessons that really have nothing to do with dog training, but I was going to share it with Anastasia, and I thought I'm going to share it with everybody so you get a little insight into what I would tell my 23-year-old self if I could go back in time and share these messages with her. I hope these things maybe touched you, and I hope you take them to heart. Thank you for listening. I love having you guys in my community. We'll see you next time, and it will be about dog training, a little more so next time.